Just last month, Turning Red released on Disney+. Since then, many have come out of the woodwork to give their thoughts on the latest Pixar film. Centering around 8th grader May, the young protagonist found herself subjected to not only the typical teenage drama, but also a magical ability passed down in her family. The movie sparked a lot of opinions online, and today we want to talk about them. I'm Caleb with Wicked Binge, and this is Turning Red, opinions we love and hate. The first thing that a lot of criticizers agreed on was they found the movie encourages rebellion. In the first few minutes, the movie clearly portrays that May did a lot to please her parents, especially her mother. The fact that May clearly respected and adored her mother wasn't the issue, however. It was the degree that she took it to. Many viewers of the movie found that May rebelled for no reason, which we have to disagree with. All May had done was finally reach the point where she realized she should be able to ask for things or feel things without being guilty about it. It's not okay for a kid to respond to an embarrassing crush by yelling at themselves in the mirror about how much they disappoint their parents.
This will never happen again.
It isn't alright for a kid to cry themselves to sleep because they can hear their mother fret over something they couldn't help in the first place. We had to place this dismal view of the movie as an opinion we hate it. Next up, we have the view of the film being a love letter to preteen girls. The director of this film had wanted to use this story as a way to portray how chaotic her life had felt undergoing puberty. As she is quoted by Den of Geek, she stated, "Making this movie was my attempt to unpack what was happening at the time." While there are a few people who found the movie unrelatable, she expressed that May's story was a good portrayal of how her own youth was. She stated that she was that awkward teenage girl, and that portrayal resonated with a lot of women who grew up feeling the same way. The unexplainable fascination with boy bands, the rising interest in romance, the need to be given more freedom even though they were clearly too young. May and her friends showed a side that many young girls felt the need to hide when growing up. The truth is, this was a love letter to the girls often shoved off to the side growing up, so we have to show our love for this view on the film. The next opinion is that this movie was too mature. The fact that this movie is very open about puberty was surprising to many. When Ming was outside of the bathroom and asked May what was happening, it was generally seen as out of Disney and Pixar's character to have such an interaction. Quite a few parents went up in arms against the movie when Ming is then giving May a lecture about keeping herself clean. To be fair, it's an interaction that fans of animated features would more expect from a company like DreamWorks, but that doesn't mean it was too mature. It was more because it was straight to the point. We even see Ming with pads in the movie, brandishing them as she tried to get away from school security. Having May simply transform without any of this added context would have been an okay enough storyline, but the fact that the creators made it clear what this change was supposed to represent was refreshing. Seeing a flawed protagonist deal with everyday chaos, as well as the mess of a magical transformation, was a great way to show May's inner turmoil. The fact is, there are a lot of movies that are great coming-of-age stories, but they rarely tackle the actual problems that come with growing up. The most many films do, especially in Disney and Pixar, is make a jab about acne or becoming interested in romance, but there's never much said about everything that happens underneath. The hormones, the sudden burst of anger and energy, the changes to one's body, these are all things generally ignored in order to make the story cleaner. Turning Red was not too mature, and so we had to hate the opinion that many saw it as such. There were some reviewers that labeled May as too confident. One reviewer by the name of Old Outlet made the complaint that May was unrelatable, and not because of her magical gifts. They stated they found May to be loud, disruptive, perverse, and arrogant. Old Outlet had made the statement that they felt May had little to complain about and yet did so at length, making her come off as a spoiled brat. This is an opinion we greatly disagree with. Mei is in fact a boisterous and outgoing young girl, yes, but we don't really see confidence as a reason to hate on a character, and it became clear as the movie progressed that once she began exploring the parts of herself she repressed for her mother, she wasn't as sure of herself.
It's time.
Even in the final minutes of the movie, Mei clearly expressed that she still had doubts about the path she was choosing. She was scared about what it meant to become a person her mother didn't recognize, but went through with it because she knew it would be better to grow as her own person. We hate the idea that Mei was suffering from too much confidence. Next, we have the claim that Turning Red is a good representation of Chinese culture. Fans of the film praised this story for how it tackled representing Mei and her family, and it's really no wonder. As we mentioned before, the director, Domi Shi, worked on this movie to show her own adolescence growing up. According to that article on Den of Geek, she explained how the movie was her way of showing how she herself struggled to relate to her mother as she grew up. Shi's mother was a Chinese immigrant in Canada, and so many of the things Mei is shown doing in the movie come directly from Shi's own life experience. Overall, we love this outlook on the film. The next review is Friends as Your Identity. She did confirm in interviews that Mei was being led away from her comfort zone due to her red panda and her friends, but that doesn't mean they were Mei's whole identity. Many viewers hesitant to accept this movie appear to have misunderstood the moments between Mei and the other girls. Yes, they could be overdramatic in their declarations of unwavering love and support, but we have to remind everyone that she was heavily influenced by not only past Disney and Pixar films, but anime. These titles are infamous for bold and over-the-top speeches declaring friendship and loyalty. Heck, that's been an ongoing joke with the Yu-Gi-Oh fandom for years. The truth was, Mei's friends weren't her identity, they were her support system. It wasn't as though she hated her parents, but she was constantly worrying about letting them down in some way. With her friends, however, they embraced the awkward and dorky parts of Mei's personality. They didn't show any judgment when Mei transformed.
He's a red panda! Sick.
Their undying care for Mei was what led to Mei being at peace enough to control her red panda. In the end, we had to label the whole idea of Mei's friendship being her entire identity as an opinion we hate. Finally, we have the last opinion on this list, great use of color theory. An article on CBR.com went into detail about the use of color throughout this movie. First, the main cast typically stands out from the rest of the world, with the background characters and settings generally relying on a blue and gray palette, while everyone else is dressed in bolder colors. Second is the obvious use of red. Not only did this come up with the red panda forms, but what Mei wears of that color as the movie goes on. After she first turns into the red panda, Mei is seen covering up in red, clearly not wanting to risk being found out by her peers. As the story progressed, Mei is seen wearing more relaxed attire, with red shirts and even the kimono she is wearing as she rushes towards the concert.
I'm going to the concert!
How the rest of the cast is dressed in comparison to Mei is also something to note. Ming and Miriam, for example, are both wearing green. They both complement Mei in different ways, so it was an appropriate choice. Priya and Abby are dressed in colors that are also complementary, but don't draw the same amount of attention as Miriam and Ming. Mei's father is adorned in white, showing him as a truly neutral character, able to see things for what they are. Wu and the aunties are all dressed similarly, in deeper set greens that match Ming's attire. There is also something to be said for how red is generally used in the movie. Mei's father calls it a lucky color, which lines up with how it is seen in many traditions in Chinese culture. There's also the fact that red is typically used in storytelling to convey a sense of danger or alarm, which helps add to the tension when Mei is conflicted about repressing her own red panda and when we see Ming's form storming through the city. Unsurprisingly, she admitted to using her inspiration from anime to help compile the color palette for this movie. It paid off, as many have applauded the subtle messages each character was able to convey just through how they were dressed. It's something that is typically put as a second thought unless the story in question revolves around a fantasy setting. So, to see it utilized so well in a film meant to take place in the early 2000s was a nice touch. This was an outlook on the movie we loved. But let us know in the comment section if you agree away with our ranking and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.